whether you're starting out as an electronics hobbyist or you want to start a business fixing laptops and computers, chances are that you're going to run into a motherboard with a bricked BIOS. It's very confusing of which programmer to get. So there's a lot of programmers out there, and I found there was a lot of information on YouTube, but not much in the English language. So I decided to try out some of the programmers, and I'll give you the pros and cons of each one. And by certainly, it's not an endorsement of any of them. Each one has its pros and cons. So we'll start with the very well-known CH341A. And the beautiful thing about this, as you can see, it's just a USB port soldered right to the board. And it's cheap. It works well. So the pros on this one is it's really cheap. And it works well. The cons is it's pretty much just a circuit board. And it's slow. It's by far the slowest out of this whole amount. And then if you go to the next one, this is a little faster, the EZP 2023 Plus. And basically, it's just like the EZP 2019. However, it probably has updated software with maybe more chips on it, and definitely with the Windows drivers that work well. So I think that's the big improvement on the 2023. And that's something that I had really a lot of troubles finding. One thing about this is it's a little faster than the CH341A, but not as fast as I thought it was. They call it a high-speed programmer. It does use the USB port and a cable. So I like that because that just kind of is a little easier than plugging in a USB port. And that works very well. Like I said, it's not as fast as I thought it would be. But it is relatively inexpensive. And it's relatively well built. And then we have, this is a professional more grade of a unit. And this is made by a company called XG ECU. And these particular units, this one is a, let me read it. It's a TL866 3G T48. And this is by far the fastest. And one of the things by this unit is this can program regular EEPROMs too, like if you were somebody into arcade stuff and all. So it has quite an extensive list of the units it can program. But it certainly can program the BIOSes too. And you can see it's by far the fastest and definitely the most sturdy. Also a USB port that you're going to plug a cable in. So this one I particularly like, but again, it's much pricier, and you can check out the prices yourself, and you'll see this is the priciest one. But it's fast. So I guess if you're really doing it a lot, this is the one to get. And I'll say on this one, it looks like this one actually does support in-circuit programming, but you got to be really careful with that. So typically it's best to take the chip out of the motherboard, but again, that involves soldering skills. And each one does come with a little clip. If you buy it in the package, this one I bought it with a package with the clip. This one I didn't buy it with the clip, but it does have some sockets. And that's nice too. As well as a carrier where you actually just solder it on, which is the most reliable. There's the BIOS chip. So with this one, like I said, it's inexpensive and it's just not as fast. But it won't, the one thing that it looks like it will not do in-circuit programming because there's a voltage drop internally. And this one I'm not sure about. It does come with a clip, but it's tough to really say on it. And in-circuit programming without removing the chip is tricky. You got to know what you're doing. You want to really make sure that the appropriate jumpers are removed, the BIOS battery, things like that. Because you don't want and the battery of if you're using a laptop, and the battery of that, because you don't want voltage going back into your stuff and burning everything out. So that's just some pointers on it. So I'm going to go over each one. I just wanted to give the pros and cons of each one. And by far also this one, which is the nicest and the fastest, has actually the nicest software out of the bunch, although all the software is pretty good. I'll say that the CH341 uses an open source software called Neo Programmer or AS Programmer. So you really got to search around and find the drivers for it and go online, and it's kind of it's definitely a journey. So that's one of the things you have to do. This one does come with a CD-ROM and the drivers, so that's kind of nice. And the drivers are signed, meaning they won't say that it's harmful for the computer. This has a download site where you have to go to a Chinese site and then it'll take you to like an American site where you can download the software. But I will say that the driver on it is unsigned, but it appears to be safe. And like I said, I really like this one. Unfortunately, it has an unsigned driver that you have to say that you're going to trust and basically override it and put it on there. So that's pretty much what there is to each one. And I'll go over more detail of each one again so you can kind of see the interface. And if you decide to do BIOS, good luck with it. Got to be really careful. Just to point out, most of the new computers have the built-in gigabyte Ethernet cards, as well as Windows product IDs in there. So if you get like a Dell or a lot of the brands still have the Windows product code for licensing, as well as the serial number and service tag. So like a Dell has a service tag in it. So one of the things with BIOS programming is sometimes it's not as easy as just copying the bin file from online and flashing it to it. You got to go in, and there's something called ME tools, and all this is like open source, and it almost feels sketchy, but it's all there's out there, and you got to go in and you got to copy some of the areas. And again, I'm just going over to programmers, because that was tough to find just a program on its own when I went out trying to find programmers. So I just ended up getting all three because I was really unsure which one was the best. And I like them all, really. But really, if you're going to do the BIOS, you really want to you really got to study it and try to look at all the videos. There's not a lot of information on it out there, and there's not a lot of software because, again, you need to be able to take the BIOS that you're putting on it, transfer over to serial number, service tag numbers, product IDs, anything like that, as well as if the unit has a gigabyte Ethernet card, which most laptops today do, you need to move over the MAC address of that. So that'll be one other thing that you got to move over. And again, if beyond the scope of this video, that can be a video to probably last an hour just in its own. So good luck with it. And here we go with looking at each particular unit and the software. Okay, here's the software part for the CH341A programmer. Well, to start with, there's no official site for the software. You kind of got to go in the wild and get it. And that may be a problem for some. And I get it. So I got a little nervous doing it myself. But basically, you're looking for Neo Programmer or AS Programmer. In my case, I downloaded the Neo Programmer, and it's actually a little newer. And in this case, there's just a little bit of a hint where I got it from. Kind of have the cursor near it. And that doesn't mean it's good or bad to cite. I'm just saying, kind of are out in the wild getting it. So you just got to be really careful that you don't get a virus on your system. Just like anything. And that's the thing I don't really like about this programmer, is that you have to get it, and you're not even sure if it has a virus or what. It's kind of an unofficial kind of site and software. But it is a cheap programmer, so It's good to go. So in this case, I'm going to go to the device manager and I'm going to install the device. And in your case, it would come up probably other on the device manager. However, in my case, I've already installed it. So there it is. You would right-click on it, update driver, and then you're going to browse, and you're going to go to the folder that has the driver, and that's going to be the ch341dll.dll. Once that driver is installed, then let's go out of this, and then you'll see it. There's going to be no exclamation points or question marks through it. It'll be ready to go. So I'm going to start the Neo programmer. This is just an executable. There's nothing to install. And the chip I have is a 25B127 DSIG. So I'm going to just see if it detects it right. And there it is, a 127. So it brings up two that kind of detect it, but the 127 is the one we want. So I'm going to select that chip, and I'm going to read. So I'm going to go up to these icons. You can see which each one are. There's a save, an open. There's the read. There's the write. And let me point out the write on this. You want to make sure these all are checked when you do the write. This is the individual erase if you want to erase the chip. You want to see if it's blank. If you want to verify it. And just what we did to detect. And that's the unlock, because the chip comes locked and it can't be programmed. But that's automatically unlocked right here on this off protect. So that's why you want these all checked when you do the write. In my case, I'm just going to read it. And you're going to probably see this takes quite a while. And I'll probably pause this. And so that's one of the drawbacks, is that it does take a while. So I'm going to pause this for a second. Okay, here's installing the drivers for the EZP 2022 Plus. You'll have to go to the CD-ROM and get the drivers from that. And you'll have to manually install them. So what we're going to do is go to the device manager. And then we're going to go in and we're going to search the directory that they're located in. So I'm manually going into that directory. Just got to find it. Then I picked the Windows 11 driver directory, because that directory has the Windows 11/10 drivers. I think the other directory may have older drivers for Windows 7 and so forth. So there you go. The driver's now installed. Once the driver's installed, you see that on the device panel it comes up good. And what we're going to do next is we're going to launch the program itself. And the program itself is an executable, so it's just launched by clicking on it. There's no installation. So I'm going to go back in. Just want to demonstrate again, it's just an executable. I copied it to the local hard drive, because you'll have to do that with the executable. It does write an INI file, and there is a database and so forth. So you're going to make a directory on your computer. And in my case, I called it just under the C drive programmers, and I put all the different programmers I have. made a subdirectory for the EZP 2022 Plus and stuck the executable in there. So I'm just going over to software now. You'll notice that it automatically finds the right device. And if it doesn't find the right device, you would want to go in and then you can install that correct device on your own. In this case, I'm actually going in and reading it now. And it takes a little bit of time to read it, and there is a database that's customizable of devices, so you can look at a device. And if you run in a device you don't find in any of these programmers, you can go in and there's plenty of information out there on, well, first of all, you can find out the data sheet on the device and just set the appropriate parameters, as well as just find an equivalent device. So like the chip that I'm using, actually, it has an equivalent WinBond chip. And as you can see, the read takes a little bit longer than I would have expected on this device. But all in all, it's a nice little piece of equipment. It just takes about as long as the CH341. And that's all you have it for the EZP 2023 Plus. And also I want to just point out that, I think the 2023 Plus versus the 2019 that I've seen out there, I think it's just that they have updated Windows drivers and perhaps maybe an updated chip database. But I don't think there's, other than that, much of a difference. I think it's more in the software than anything, from what I can see. Okay, for the software for the TL866 G3 T48 programmer, well, you have to go to the manufacturer sends you to their site, which is in China. So it kind of throws you off a little bit because you'll see, well, just all Chinese writing, but you're looking for, on their site, the server that says off-seas download. So that's going to be somewhere in the United States or somewhere that's downloadable. So it kind of just sets you off a little bit, but it is official software that the manufacturer has. Although I will tell you, their device driver is not signed. So it will come up and say, when you install it, that it could be harmful if you install it on the computer. But that's just because it's unsigned driver. So there is an install. You'll download that. And then you're going to also make sure the driver's good. So we'll go to Device Manager. In this case, it's already installed. So it's going to come up as it actually has its own device here. And this is the driver. But again, when you first install it, it'll come up as other. And like I said, this is already installed. I think it has an installer, and it also has the DLL, which you could go and just update it. Same as other programs or any device driver, you would go and you could just find the source of it. This is installed already. As you can see, it's working correctly. So let's just go right to the software. And the software is pretty nice. So it actually installed it on the desktop. This is an install. Here it is over here. Just going to double click this. I already have the chip in. Now, it already identified the chip in this case, but I actually like to select the IC ahead of time before I put it in. And the reason for this is that This way, you're sure that you're not going to get any more power than it should take. So if you set the IC from the beginning, this IC is a 3.3 volt IC, then you're sure that when you put that in the programmer, that IC is going to be 3.3 volts. So that's just me. I like to be extra careful, especially if I'm fixing somebody's computer. So this is already set. The device I have is let's see here, it's a 25B127 DS, let me look this up here. Yeah, 125B127 DSIG. So basically, this is the closest to it. This is it. I'm not sure what the SIG means, but there it is. And so that's the device. Now we're going to read it, and we'll just go over to software. We can load an image, and I believe this can even load bin files and cap files. So that's really nice. So you can check it, check blank, verify it, read it, or program it. Erase it. There are some other features on here. I'm not exactly sure what they do. And I think this also can check logic circuits as well as write out serially through an HDMI port of some sort. And I'm not sure how that gets hooked up, but it can actually program TV flash. So again, that's beyond the scope of this, but this is a really nice unit because it does a lot of devices, and it can even do, for example, I do like to experiment with PIC microcontrollers. It even can do some of them. So there's a device list that you can find, and you can look that up and see what kind of devices it supports. But I would say most people, all they're worried about is just the BIOS programs, and that's what we're here to cover today. So let's read it and see how long it's going to take. Shows the chip orientation, and basically it's going to read the entire chip is what we're going to do. And what I like about this, it says that the pins flashed or checked out on the flash. So that's really nice that it checked the pins, that there's the connections are good. And if you look, it's already finished. So that's how quick it is compared to the CH341. It's amazingly quick. And this is even on a slow PC. And there it is. So I could just save this as a bin file or an Intel hex, and typically you would save it as a bin file. And again, I could also open a bin file. I'm not going to go through the write. The write takes a little bit longer, but I'm going to say it doesn't take probably not longer than 3 minutes, more like a minute or two. So it's significantly faster. It's a nice little unit, and I actually do like the software a lot, especially that it checks to make sure everything's hooked up all right. That's all there's to it.